He looked at me like I was the problem. But the truth wash had been my problem for years. And maybe the cruelest part was that now he stood at the front of the classroom. All authority and confidence. While I was just another student pretending not to burn for him. Summer classes weren't supposed to be dramatic. They were supposed to be quick. Boring. A way to get an extra credit knocked off so I could free my fall semester. But here I was. Second row from the front. Heart pounding against my ribs like it wanted to escape. Staring at the man I had once thought I'd never see again. "Mr. Thompson," he said, his voice slicing through the heavy silence like a blade. Took me half a second to realize he was talking to me. My head snapped up. Eyes colliding with his, those same eyes I used to memorize in secret back when he was just him. Not professor. Not off limits. Just the boy who once sat 3 rows behind me in high school. Who used to walk the same cracked sidewalks of our small town. Whose laugh I carried like a bruise on my heart. Yes. My voice cracked. And a few students chuckled. Heat crawled up my neck. "Do you have an answer for the question?" His expression was calm. Measured. But there was a flicker of something recognition. Maybe. That lived only in the twitch of his mouth. I hadn't even heard the question. The truth was, I didn't care about the question. I cared about him, Ethan Carter. My Ethan. Except now he wasn't mine. Not really. He never had been. And now he was standing in front of me. Sleeves rolled. Chalk dust on his fingers. And I was supposed to pretend like this wasn't the most dangerous summer of my life. I never thought I'd see him again. After high school, I had buried that version of myself, the boy who had whispered Ethan's name into his pillow like a prayer. The boy who had written letters he never sent. I moved on. I built walls. I told myself I'd outgrow it. But life has a cruel sense of humor. When I walked into that sunlit classroom on the first day of summer classes, ready to slog through American literature, I didn't expect to find him there. Not as a student. As the professor. Young. Newly hired. Beautiful in a way that made my throat ache. And Wursa looked at me like he remembered. The thing about unspoken love is that it rots inside you. It grows sharper. Heavier with time. Seeing him again was like reopening a wound I had stitched clumsily years ago. Our town was small back then. Everyone knew everyone. Ethan was the golden boy captain of the debate team. The kid teachers adored. I was the shadow, the quiet one, watching from corners. He never knew. Or maybe he did and chose to look away. Now, he stood in front of the classroom, explaining the importance of Walt Whitman with a voice that was steadier than my heartbeat. Every word felt like an arrow aimed at me, even when it wasn't. And then his eyes flickered back to mine. Too many times. Too long. That's when I realized it wasn't just me anymore. He saw me. After class, I lingered, pretending to pack my bag slower than anyone else. Students filtered out. The sound of laughter echoing down the hallway. My fingers trembled as I zipped my backpack. I could feel him watching me. When the door clicked shut, silence stretched between us. "You were staring," he said finally. The words hit me like a slap. Direct. Accusing. Vulnerable. I wasn't, my voice faltered. I wanted to lie, but I couldn't. Okay, maybe I was. His brow furrowed, the corner of his mouth twitching with something unreadable. Why? Why? As if I could tell him. As if I could unload years of silence. Of longing. Of teenage nights spent hoping he'd somehow look my way. Instead, I shrugged. I don't know. Maybe because you're standing up there. And it feels surreal. He tilted his head, studying me like I was a puzzle. Then, softer. I didn't expect to see you here. The way he said it wasn't casual. It was weighted. It was history dripping from his tongue. "You remember me?" I whispered. His eyes darkened. How could I not? That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily in the humid summer air. My chest was a battlefield. Half of me wanted to run. The other half wanted to fall harder, faster, even if it destroyed me. I thought about the way his voice dipped when he said my name, about the flicker in his eyes when he saw me, about how this wasn't high school anymore. He wasn't the boy I secretly loved. He was a professor. My professor. The lines had never been clearer and never more tempting to cross. The next class. I tried to look anywhere but at him. My notebook filled with half-scribbled words, none of which made sense. But the truth was, my gaze betrayed me, kept finding its way back. And every time it did, I found his already there. It was like a secret game we played in silence, both of us daring the other to look away first. But one moment shattered it all. "Whitman's poetry," he said, pacing at the front of the room, "is about desire, about the unspoken, about the way love can exist even when the world doesn't have room for it." And then he looked directly at me. The air went thin. My pen slipped from my fingers, clattering against the desk. He didn't look away. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just me anymore. This was him too. By the third week of summer class, tension was the only language we spoke. He never said anything outright, never broke the rules he was supposed to uphold. But the looks, the pauses, the words left unsaid, they were daggers between us. After one particularly long lecture, I stayed behind again. My pulse raced as students left, one by one. When the door finally closed, it was just us. "You keep staying behind," he said, voice low. "Maybe I like the quiet," I replied, but even I didn't believe my own words. "Or maybe," he stepped closer, "you're waiting for me." My breath caught. The space between us shrank until I could smell the faint cologne on his shirt. He looked at me with something dangerous in his eyes, something that made my knees weak. "You can't look at me like that," he whispered, almost like a plea. "Like what?" My voice shook. "Like you've been waiting your whole life." And I broke. I don't know who moved first, him or me. All I know is that suddenly the air was gone, the distance gone, and he was right there, close enough to feel the heat of him. But before it could happen, before the line could be crossed, pulled back, eyes burning with regret. "We can't," he muttered, stepping away like it physically hurt. "Not here. Not like this." I stood frozen, the weight of unsaid words crushing me, because I knew he was right. And yet, every part of me screamed for him anyway. The night after he pulled away, couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight, as if someone had locked my lungs in a box and swallowed the key. Sleep didn't come. I tossed. I turned. I buried my face in the pillow, but his words kept echoing in my head. Not here. Not like this. The rational part of me knew he was right. He was a professor. I was a student, lines carved into stone, rules written in ink older than either of us. But the other part, the part of me that still remembered the boy I once watched from across the high school cafeteria, didn't care about rules. That boy only cared about Ethan. And Ethan had looked at me like he wanted me to. The next day, I almost didn't go to class. My stomach churned as I hovered outside the building, the heavy summer air sticking to my skin. I thought about turning around, pretending I was sick, avoiding the collision I knew was coming. But I walked in anyway. He was already there, erasing the chalkboard with a cloth, his back to me. For a moment, I just stood in the doorway, watching the way his shirt clung to his shoulders, the way his hair curled slightly at the back of his neck. My heart thudded. He turned at the sound of the door. Our eyes met, and for a second, something flickered: relief, warmth, danger. Then he blinked, his face smoothing into neutrality. "Morning, Mr. Thompson," he said evenly, and just like that, the walls were back up. The lecture was torture. Every word he spoke slid under my skin. Every movement drew me in. I told myself not to look at him, but I failed miserably. It wasn't just attraction anymore. It was gravity. Halfway through, he asked the class about forbidden desire in Whitman's poems. My throat dried. His eyes scanned the room, lingering on me a second too long. My pulse spiked. "Sometimes," he said carefully, "the most powerful love is the one that cannot be spoken aloud." The room was silent, but I heard it anyway. The unsaid truth. The arrow meant only for me. That night, I didn't plan it. I didn't even think it through. After class, I packed my bag quickly, my heart pounding. But instead of leaving, I found myself walking slower, waiting until the hallway was almost empty. By the time I stepped outside, the sky had bruised into twilight. The campus was quiet, cicadas buzzing in the humid air. And there he was leaning against the railing by the steps, his tie loosened, his eyes shadowed. He saw me, didn't move, didn't look away. Something inside me snapped. "You can't keep looking at me like that," I blurted out, echoing his own words from before. My voice trembled, but I stood my ground. His jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're saying." "Yes, I do," I shot back, louder than I meant. My chest rose and fell, every nerve burning. "You think I don't notice? You think I don't feel it? I stopped myself before the truth tumbled out too recklessly. "I've been seeing it in your eyes." For a long moment, he didn't answer. The streetlight above us hummed, throwing shadows across his face. He looked older than I remembered, more tired, more conflicted. Finally, he said softly, "You're not wrong." The world tilted. "But that doesn't mean it can happen." His words sliced through me, but the way his voice cracked on the last word told me he was lying to himself. I stepped closer, my backpack hanging loosely from one strap. "So what? We just keep pretending. I sit in your class every day while we both suffocate. Do you think I want this?" His voice sharpened, his control slipping. "Do you think it's easy for me to stand up there and act like you're just another student? God, you have no idea what this is doing to me." My heart stopped. The confession hung in the thick night air. My skin prickled, my breath shallow. He looked at me like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, torn between jumping and stepping back. I whispered, "Then don't fight it." His eyes closed, as if my words hurt more than they healed. When they opened again, they were glassy with something raw. "I can't lose this job," he said, voice shaking. "Do you understand that? I worked too hard. I fought too long." If anyone found out, he broke off, dragging a hand through his hair. "It's not just about me. It's about you too. They'd eat you alive." I swallowed hard. He was right. The world was cruel, especially about this, about us. But standing there, under the glow of the streetlight, I couldn't make myself care. All I cared about was him. The weeks that followed were unbearable. We danced around each other like moths circling a flame, each of us too afraid to touch, too afraid to burn. And yet, every day, the pull grew stronger. He avoided my eyes during lectures, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand gripped the chalk too tightly. I knew he felt it. I knew because I felt it too. Sometimes I caught him looking when he thought I wasn't. A glance that lingered too long, softening in ways no professor should ever soften toward a student. It was killing us both. One evening, after a brutal thunderstorm, I found myself alone in the library. Rain still tapped against the windows, the scent of wet earth drifting inside. I sat at a table, pretending to study, but my mind was chaos. And then footsteps. I looked up. My stomach dropped. It was him, Ethan. His hair was damp, his shirt slightly wrinkled, as if the storm had chased him inside. He froze when he saw me, his lips parting in surprise. "Library's quiet tonight," I said, my voice thin. He hesitated, then walked over, placing his bag on the chair across from me. "Yeah. Everyone probably went home after the storm." The silence stretched. My heart thudded painfully. I couldn't take it anymore. "Why do you keep torturing us like this?" I whispered, my fingers clenching around the pen I hadn't written with in 20 minutes. His eyes darted to mine, full of conflict. "You think I'm not torturing myself too?" The words were too much, too heavy, too real. I shoved the pen aside. "Then stop." Before he could argue, before I lost my nerve, I stood, walked around the table, and leaned down. For one suspended moment, our faces were inches apart, breath mingling, hearts racing. His eyes searched mine, desperate, broken, and then kissed me. It was nothing like I imagined, and yet everything I had dreamed. Fierce, desperate, years of silence breaking all at once. His hand cupped the back of my neck, pulling me closer, as if he'd drown if he let go. The world disappeared. It was just us. Only us. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine, both of us gasping for air. His voice was hoarse. "This can't happen again." But we both knew it would. The days blurred after that. We became careful, cautious, but nothing could erase what had happened. That kiss had branded me, claimed me, ruined me for anything else. And judging by the way his eyes softened every time he accidentally met mine, it ruined him too. The summer sun kept rising and setting. But inside, we lived in a constant twilight on the edge of something dangerous and beautiful, knowing it couldn't last, and yet unable to stop. Because sometimes love wasn't about logic. Sometimes love was a storm you walked into willingly, even if it tore you apart. The kiss haunted me for days. It lived in my chest like a secret flame, burning me from the inside out. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt it again, the warmth of his lips, the desperation in his hands, the way time seemed to stop and then collapse all at once. And yet, after that night in the library, Ethan avoided me with surgical precision. He didn't call on me in class. He didn't linger near me after lectures. He didn't even let his gaze flicker in my direction anymore. He constructed walls so thick it was like the kiss had never happened at all. But I couldn't forget. I wouldn't. The silence between us hurt worse than rejection. It felt like punishment for a crime we had both committed willingly. He kissed me. He pulled me close. He whispered promises in the way his hands trembled against my skin. So why was I the only one drowning in it now? By the end of the week, I couldn't take it anymore. I skipped dinner with friends, walked the humid streets of town until I found myself outside the small diner near campus, the one that stayed open until midnight. The one I knew he liked. I told myself it was coincidence. But deep down, I knew I was chasing him. And there he was, sitting alone at a booth near the window, coffee cup steaming in front of him, a notebook open with scribbled lecture notes. He looked older under the fluorescent lights, wearier, but still devastatingly himself. I stood outside for a moment, watching the way he rubbed at his temple, the way his jaw clenched like he was fighting something inside. Then, before I could talk myself out of it, I walked in. He noticed me instantly. His eyes widened, then narrowed, as if caught between relief and panic. I slid into the booth across from him without asking. My heart hammered so loud I thought the whole diner could hear it. "You're avoiding me," I said, my voice barely steady. He didn't answer at first. He stared into his coffee as if it might swallow him whole. Then he sighed. "You shouldn't be here." "Then tell me to leave." His eyes snapped up, sharp, burning. But he didn't tell me to leave. The silence was an answer of its own. "I can't do this," he whispered finally. "Not with you. Not while I'm your professor." "Then why did you kiss me?" My voice cracked on the words. The hurt spilled out before I could stop it. "You could have walked away. You could have ignored me. But you didn't. You kissed me like you meant it." His hand tightened around the coffee cup, knuckles white. "Because I did mean it." The world tilted again. My throat closed. "Then stop pretending it didn't happen." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time, there was no wall, no mask, just raw, unfiltered longing. "You don't understand," he said softly, brokenly. "This job is everything. My career, my future, it could all be destroyed if anyone knew. I can't risk it. I can't risk you." Something hot surged in my chest. Maybe I don't care about rules. Maybe I just care about you. His breath hitched. For a moment, I thought he'd reach across the table, close the distance. But instead, he buried his face in his hands, groaning quietly. "God, you're going to ruin me," he muttered. I leaned forward, my voice trembling but sure. "Maybe we'll ruin each other." After that night, the line we swore we wouldn't cross blurred again. We didn't make promises. We didn't talk about what it meant. But something had shifted. He stopped avoiding me. He let his gaze linger in class again, just for a heartbeat too long. His voice softened when he called my name. Sometimes, when no one else was around, his fingers brushed mine quick. Secret. Electric. We were playing with fire, and every day we got closer to being burned. But I couldn't stop. Neither could he. One evening, after a long lecture, he caught me as I was leaving. "Stay," he said quietly, almost like a command, almost like a plea. I froze. The last student slipped out, the door clicking shut behind them. When it was just us, he leaned against the desk, his eyes shadowed. "I can't keep doing this," he said. "The pretending, the distance, is killing me." My heart stuttered. "Then don't pretend." He shook his head, tortured. "Do you have any idea how dangerous this is?" "Yes," I said. "And I don't care." His chest rose and fell, ragged. Then, in two strides, he closed the distance, his hand cupping my jaw, his lips crashing against mine. This kiss was different, hungrier, desperate, the kind of kiss that carried all the words we couldn't say. I clung to him, my hands fisting in his shirt, terrified he'd pull away again. But he didn't. Not this time. We didn't talk about what we were. We didn't define it. But our bodies spoke in the silences, in the stolen touches, in the moments when the world faded. and it was just him and me, tangled in something too big to name. Still, the fear never left. Every glance over the shoulder, every pause when footsteps echoed down the hall, every time the classroom door creaked open, my heart leapt into my throat. We were fragile. One slip, one mistake, and everything would collapse. And yet, I couldn't stop reaching for him. One night, as we lay tangled in the sheets of his small apartment, the city hum drifting through the window, I asked the question that had been clawing at me for weeks. What happens when summer ends? His hand stilled on my back. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, softly, I don't know. The honesty cut deeper than any lie. I buried my face against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. I wanted to believe we could survive this, that the world would make room for us somehow. But doubt gnawed at me, because love wasn't always enough. And I was terrified that when the leaves changed, he'd choose safety over me. The days stretched on, heavy with both joy and dread. Every stolen moment felt like a gift we weren't supposed to have. Every kiss carried the weight of goodbye. And deep down, I knew this couldn't last forever. The question wasn't if we'd be caught. The question was when. I thought secrets would feel thrilling, like stolen kisses in the dark. And for a while, it did. Every time Ethan's hand brushed mine under the table, every time his eyes softened just for me, I felt alive in a way I hadn't before. But the truth was, the secrecy also carved me open. It wasn't just passion, it was panic. It was the constant sound of footsteps in the hall, the fear of a door swinging open, the paranoia that someone, anyone, could see us and end everything. Because everything we were building was a house made of glass. One thrown stone, and it would all shatter. The first scare came on a Thursday afternoon. Class had just ended, and I stayed behind under the excuse of needing clarification on an assignment. Ethan closed the door after the last student left, his shoulders slumping the way they only did when we were alone. "You drive me insane," he whispered, pulling me in by the wrist, pressing his lips against mine before I could even drop my bag. The kiss was sharp, urgent, stolen. I melted into him, forgetting the world for just a second. But then, the doorknob rattled. We froze. "Professor Carter." A voice called from the hall. "Do you have a minute?" It was the head of our department. Ethan pulled away so fast it was like I'd burned him. His chest heaved as he smoothed his shirt, straightened his tie. His eyes darted to me, wild, pleading. I stumbled back to my desk, fumbling with my notebook, pretending to scribble notes just as the door creaked open. The department chair poked his head in. "Oh, you're still here, Thompson." I swallowed hard. "Yeah, just finishing up." The chair turned to Ethan. "I wanted to discuss next semester's syllabus." My pulse thundered in my ears as Ethan answered, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. That was the first time I realized how fragile this was, how close we already were to being exposed. That night, Ethan was quiet, too quiet. We sat in his apartment, the hum of the fridge filling the silence. He kept running his hands through his hair, pacing like a man with too many ghosts at his back. Finally, I couldn't take it. "Say something." His eyes met mine, filled with fear. "We can't keep doing this. Not like today." If he had walked in, but he didn't. "That doesn't matter. One day, someone will." The air between us went heavy. I felt the sting of tears pressing against my eyes. "So what are you saying? That we stop? That all of this meant nothing?" "Don't," he said sharply. pain flashing in his expression. Don't ever think this means nothing. He cut himself off, his jaw tight. You mean more to me than you'll ever know. Then prove it, I whispered. He looked at me like I was asking him to walk into fire. And maybe I was. The days that followed were tense. We still found each other in the quiet corners of the library, in the empty stairwell where the lights flickered, in the shadows of parking lots at dusk. But there was a new edge to it now. Every touch felt desperate, rushed. Every kiss felt like it could be our last. I hated it. I loved him, and I hated what we were becoming. Two people held together not by joy but by fear. Then came the second scare. It was a humid evening, campus buzzing with summer heat. Ethan and I sat in his car, parked in the far corner of the lot where the lamps barely worked. The windows fogged from the closeness of our bodies. Our laughter hushed and giddy. He reached across, brushing my cheek with the back of his hand. I leaned in, lips parting. A knock on the window. We both jumped, our bodies flying apart like magnets forced to repel. A campus security guard stood outside, flashlight in hand. Everything okay in there? He asked. My throat closed. Ethan rolled the window down, his voice remarkably calm. Yes, officer. Just grading papers with a student. Nothing unusual. The guard's eyes flicked between us. Suspicion lingered there. Heavy. Sharp. Be careful, the guard said finally, tapping the roof of the car before walking away. We sat frozen in silence long after he left. That night, Ethan didn't invite me inside. He didn't even look at me as he drove me back to my dorm. His knuckles were white against the steering wheel. His jaw clenched so hard I thought it might break. When we pulled up, I reached for the door handle, but paused. Ethan, he finally looked at me. His eyes weren't cold. They were broken. This has to stop, he said quietly. My heart cracked. You don't mean that. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. I do. For both of us. Before this goes too far. Tears blurred my vision. It's already too far. His hand twitched on the wheel, like he wanted to reach for me. But he didn't. And I got out, my chest hollow, my heart heavier than it had ever been. The next class was agony. He didn't look at me once. He didn't call on me. Didn't linger. Didn't even breathe in my direction. It was like I didn't exist. I wanted to scream. I wanted to walk up to him in front of everyone. Shout the truth. Demand he stop pretending. But I didn't. Because I was afraid. Afraid of losing him completely. That weekend, I didn't leave my dorm. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment we had shared. The kisses, the laughter, the way his voice softened when he said my name. I couldn't believe it was over. Not like this. And yet, what choice did I have? He had made it clear. He had chosen safety. He had chosen distance. But my heart wouldn't let go. I still loved him. God help me. I still loved him. On Monday, I walked into class ready to face the silence again. But something was different. He looked at me. Not just looked, stared. His eyes found mine across the room. And for a moment, the world narrowed down to just us. There was no class, no students, no risk, just him. And in that look, I saw everything he wasn't saying. Regret, longing, love. The kind of love that doesn't die just because it's inconvenient. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. The storm outside had finally broken into a drizzle. Soft taps against the windows like a lullaby. But inside, In the quiet of Adrian's apartment, the air thrummed with an intimacy that words could never quite capture. I sat on his couch, wrapped in one of his hoodies, my fingers nervously tracing the seams, while he moved around the kitchen, pouring tea as if this was the most natural thing in the world. It wasn't. At least not for me. My heart hadn't caught up to the fact that we'd made it here through the stairs. The whispers, the misunderstandings, the fragile dance of professor and student. And then just two men figuring out if the world would let them love each other without burning for it. Adrian set the mug in front of me, his hand lingering a moment too long against mine. "You've been quiet," he said softly. "Just thinking," I replied, my throat thick. "About?" His eyes searched mine, warm, patient, like they always were when he was waiting for me to untangle the mess inside me. "About how much I almost ruined this," I admitted. "All the times I let fear get in the way. All the times I stared at you across the classroom and pretended I didn't care when all I wanted was." I broke off, unable to finish. Adrian leaned in, his forehead brushing against mine. "You wanted me, and I wanted you." His voice trembled on the edges of something raw, vulnerable. "I still do." The truth of it shattered whatever walls I had left. I reached for him, pulling him close until the space between us disappeared. The kiss wasn't desperate this time, it was slow, reverent, a promise instead of a plea. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. Summer bled into fall, and with it came changes neither of us could avoid. Classes shifted. Rumors never fully died, though they softened into background noise. But what mattered, what always mattered, was the quiet moments carved out between the chaos. Like the afternoons spent walking across campus, side by side, the world none the wiser to the weight of our joined hands brushing in secret. Or the evenings when Adrian would cook in that tiny kitchen, pretending to follow recipes, only to burn half of them because I kept distracting him. "Stop staring at me like that," he'd say, though his smile betrayed him every time. "Never," I'd tease. "It's basically tradition now." And he'd roll his eyes, but his laughter would linger like music. We were learning how to be together, how to hold space for the parts of ourselves scarred by expectations and silence. There were still shadows that tried to creep in, the fear of being seen, the questions about the future, the careful line Adrian walked between professionalism and the undeniable pull between us. But we faced them together, hand in hand, even when neither of us had all the answers. The night of the faculty mixer came like a test we hadn't studied for. I wasn't supposed to be there, just another student, invisible in the swirl of suits and sparkling glasses, but Adrian had insisted, promising me it would be fine. And it was. Until it wasn't. A colleague with a sharp smile and sharper tongue cornered us near the back, his words dripping with insinuation. "Funny, isn't it?" he murmured. "The way you two always seem to orbit one another." Adrian's jaw tightened, but before he could answer, I stepped forward. Maybe because I like him. Maybe because he likes me. Maybe because it's not really anyone else's business. Silence fell. Eyes turned. My chest burned. But I didn't look away. For once, I wasn't going to shrink into the background. Adrian's hand found mine, firm and sure. And in that moment, I knew we weren't going to hide anymore. Not from them. Not from anyone. Weeks later, under the crisp autumn sky, we sat on the steps outside the library, a place that had been both a battlefield and a sanctuary for us. Students hurried past, caught up in their own worlds, none sparing us more than a passing glance. Adrian tilted his head, studying me with that same curious expression he wore the first day he caught me staring at him. "What are you thinking about?" I smiled, leaning into him. "How this all started. How you asked me why I kept looking at you." "And now?" he asked, brushing a stray leaf from my hair. "Now I'm never going to stop." He laughed quietly, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. "Good. Because I plan on giving you a lifetime to keep staring." And with that, the weight of everything we'd endured, the doubt, the fear, the night spent wondering if we'd ever be allowed to want what we wanted melted into something lighter. Something that felt like forever. Love, we discovered, wasn't about the drama that brought us together. It wasn't about the stolen glances or the rules we broke or even the risks we took. It was about the quiet mornings, the shared laughter, the whispered confessions at 3 a.m. when the world was asleep. It was about choosing each other, again and again, no matter what. And in the end, that was enough, because I had re-enrolled in a summer class just to see him. But what I found was the rest of my life. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.